Hello students, we're looking at chapter 9 now. We're getting into the creative side of the advertising um, that we're learning here in our class. So let's start. So this was a great example offered by the book, and it's about REI and how they make a creative, bold move. I don't know if you're aware of this, but this company has 143 kind of outdoor type stores. And what they did on a Black Friday, and I believe they continue to do this, the busiest shopping day of the year, they closed their store and they made this ad campaign that says hashtag opt outside. And instead of promoting themselves on the biggest day, shopping day of the year, they said, hey, get outside. And it did very well. They made sure that their employees went out and enjoyed the outdoors. And it really sent a message to their target audience about how they feel about their employees. And it was very successful. So that is a very creative way to connect with your audience. So what is the role of creativity in the integrated marketing communications? Creativity can be defined as the generation of fresh ideas and solutions to current problems or challenges. So I honestly, as a business person, say that creative solutions are so important. To solve a problem creatively and to look at something differently is such a talent, actually. And you don't have to be an artist. You have to be someone who just looks at something from a different perspective. Creativity requires the ability to think like a problem solver and the courage to take risks and try something new. So that's always kind of walking the tight wire there in advertising. How far is too far? So the role of creativity in the integrated marketing communications is really the role that is shared between the team at the ad agency. So there's the account planners, the copywriters, the art directors, and the social media and content directors. They all work together to create a concept, the wording, and the pictures that go around the whole completion of an ad. So it's never just one person. It's always a team of people who understand their target audience and understand their client and understand the message they're trying to convey to their audience. So let's start with the creative director. And we have touched on this before, but this is kind of, let's continue to go over this. This person manages the creative process and plays an important role in focusing the strategy of the ads. So they make sure that the creative concept is on target. Creative directors must be familiar with the user experience design, which is basically the interactive conversation about the brand, which has changed so much. So an example here is how can we do this as advertisers? And I give the example here of Doritos crashed the Super Bowl. Well, what a great idea where they got the end user of the product completely involved in this. Now, they never did use the exact ad from a user, but they got a pouring in of a lot of different ideas, and then they kind of patched them together to create very successful ads specifically for the Super Bowl and beyond. So that's called the user experience design. And really what it comes down to is listening to your audience. Here is an example of a company called Urban Decay. And this is a very creative company in that they take risks in the way that they name their products and the packaging that they use. Their packaging looks like, or what they're called palettes for those who don't know the makeup world, whether it's for eyeshadow or bronzers or etc. And what they do is they have this packaging that's really kind of cool looking, called Naked, and they have different interesting names such as Smog, Mildew, Oil Slick. So that's kind of, taking things a different way. There's also other makeup companies where their packaging looks like it's a box of chocolates. Pretty cool. So the art and science of integrated marketing communication. So there is a combination going on here. So creative strategy brings together the art and the science of advertising. One, it must be creative. So it must be unexpected, original. Then strategic is the science part of it, is right for the product and the target, and it meets the objectives that have been laid out for the campaign. So creative thinking, how do we do it? So there's always this thing called the big idea that you hope your ad agency or you as the ad agency comes up with. But it just doesn't happen. It happens because a lot of different things go on. You are thinking more risk. You're trying to be riskier. You're trying to be creative. Here's an example of what was considered the big idea in, say, the 1950s with the Coppertone Girl, and that was risky. And then here on the right, we have the Nike ad. Now that's really risky. They're taking something that is a stance and putting that out there, and that's them being a risky type company. So I think it's interesting how the left is very much at the time was very like, oh, look what we're showing here. And now things have really escalated here in 2019. So the return on your investment of your creativity is very important. And you know that you have had an effective ad if your message is relevant to your target audience, it's interesting and unexpected, and that means it's original, and it's impactful because it makes an impression. I love this Got Milk campaign. I'm a sweet eater, I'll be honest with you, but I just thought this was so creative that they were using the cupcakes that I know from the Philadelphia area that could have been like Tasty Cakes or Hostess or something, Little Debbie's, and they wrote on that, and you just look at it and you just want a glass of milk. At least I do. Or whatever version of milk you might drink these days. But that screams, I want to dip you in milk. So they did an amazing job. And here's just another perspective on it. Okay, so how do you make that creative leap and become a risky or a creative solution type person? So they call it divergent thinking, and it means that you're exploring multiple possibilities rather than just saying, oh, this is the logical conclusion or the right conclusion. In advertising, you can be free and be open to look at things from your right side of your brain, more artistic and emotional expression. So left brain thinking is logical, linear, and orderly, whereas right brain is a little more creative. So I like this example. A divergent thinker thinks of all possible ways to reach a solution, and a convergent thinks about a final solution. So we want to be divergent thinkers when we are in the marketing world and we go to work for any companies. They're looking for people that are going to think outside the box, as I said. And certainly you as Gen Z and millennials do that. It's shifting your mind and looking at something from a different angle is what it is. And it also helps you kind of, as we say, think outside the box and come up with an original idea. So that's really what we would like you to do here when looking at Grace Notes with fresh eyes. Most of you have never heard of it. I doubt if any of you have. So think of it through your perspective. You're getting your surveys back. You're going to get that data. But come together as a group to come up with that big idea. Here's a great idea here many years ago by Michelin. And what they did was, everybody loves babies, but Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires. So they kind of are using that wording and giving it two different meanings. But yes, it's a durable tire, but also, look, I have, baby on board here. So dialing up your creativity, how do you do that? Some of us are naturally creative. Some of us need some kind of influence or some kind of like retreat, or need to be in a place or special space that helps us be more creative. And this is what the textbook is talking about, characteristics of creative people. They're usually problem solvers. It doesn't mean they have the right answer all the time. There's a playfulness, ability to visualize something. I'm a very visual person and creative person, but I need to have a visual. And you can probably see that in all my PowerPoint slides. I almost always have a visual. That's the way I learn. That's how I connect. An openness to new experiences and conceptual thinking. So always being curious, no matter if it's in your personal, professional, academic life. Always asking questions. Why? Why? If you do that, it will help you along the way for sure. So things you can do to be more creative is immerse yourself in things like reading and research. Ideation is another thing, generating as many ideas as possible. A lot of companies bring their students or bring their employees on retreats, get them out of the office, get them into an ideation session so that you don't feel like you have barriers. And then I don't want you to get into a situation where we call it brain fog, where you like hit the wall and you just can't think anymore. Okay, so now it's difficult to do this when we're not in a regular face-to-face class, but if you can get together with your group via email, conference call, whatever, and have your own brainstorming session, this is a great idea. Okay, assemble 6 to 10 people to generate ideas, and we play off each other. We stimulate one another, and we say that there's no wrong answers. Okay, we're what we call an idea factory. Special processes or locations, like I said before, help a creative team because they get out of their regular place and they might go somewhere that is kind of inspirational. Inspirational place for me, I love going into like a Michael's craft store or Joanne Fabric, or a place near me in Pennsylvania was called AC Moore. Whatever it was a craft store, and I don't even know how to sew, but these kinds of places always inspire me to do something different. Okay, so here's some brainstorming techniques, and you can also find them on page 261 of your text. So it kind of helps you come up with some creative ways for your tagline, your jingle. You can play on words, you can twist a cliche, you can dramatize the obvious, have an unexpected association, an exaggeration. So these are just kind of some ideas that kind of help you play with the words, play with the meaning, and get creative when you're coming up with everything from the mission statement to a tagline to a jingle. Whatever you decide to do as a group, try to be as creative as possible and use these tactics. Okay, to prevent unoriginal ideas, the textbook suggests that you avoid things such as lookalikes. So avoid the copycat advertising and, of course, the tasteless twists or cliches. Some key message strategy approaches. Okay, so back to the creative brief. Remember, this is really the basis or the foundation of your paper. And that is that document that summarizes your marketing and advertising strategy. And it gives direction to the whole creative team. So when we're talking about a creative brief, this is something that you as the advertising agency comes up with alongside your client, and it guides you through it until you get to your end goal. So creative strategy or message strategy is what the advertisement says, and the execution is how it was said. So did you use humor? Is it a jingle? Is someone using an accent? Like, this is how are you getting this across to the target audience? And the creative strategy is what the advertisement actually says. So the key points in your brief is, what's the problem? The problem is that there is no awareness about your product, which is, in your case, a nonprofit. They need to build their donors. They need to make awareness of themselves in the South Florida area. They need to connect with other nonprofits that can kind of boost them along. So these are just some of the problems. Certainly you'll find more. Who's your target audience? And key insights into their attitudes and behavior. So that's what you're working on with your secondary and primary research. Your brand position and other branding decisions, such as the personality and image. Who do you want to be? How do you want to come across in the customer's mind? Okay, and in terms of a nonprofit, it's a little different than if we were talking about an actual product. The communication objectives that specify the desired response to the message by the target audience. What do you want them to do? You want them to volunteer? Do you want them to donate? Do you just want them to be aware of it? Do you want them to like your Facebook page? What do you want them to do? That's your objectives. Those are your communication objectives that you will be coming up with. More on the creative brief. Proposition or selling idea. What will motivate the target audience to respond? Perhaps you're having an event. Maybe you are showing off the talent, or maybe there's a story behind, a success story because of donors. And look at, Billy, who, started out here and now he's going to this this music school in New York. This is his story. What's going to motivate them to continue to donate or be a part of this nonprofit? We have to consider what media and message you're going to be delivering. One is where and when the message should be delivered. Where it should be delivered are the questions you asked in your survey. So where is your target audience? Are they looking at social media? Are they listening to podcasts? Are they paging through magazines? And when? Remember, you ask those questions. That could be time of day, time of year, things like that. And what is your creative direction? What provides suggestions on how to stimulate the desired consumer response? There's a lot that's out there now creatively to get people motivated. So that's your job as an ad agency in your group to figure out. So this is an example, just to kind of give you a real life perspective on what a creative brief looks like. So in your textbook, there is a story about this this company called Road Crew. Okay, and it's really a concept. I think it clearly must be something local, but I want you to look at the logo and consider that as we go through here. So why are we advertising at all? Okay, Road Crew's creative brief: to create an awareness for an evening alternative ride service. Clearly this is something that is Uber and Lyft competitive. What is the advertising trying to do? It's trying to make the new ride service appealing to men, okay, in order to reduce the number of alcoholic-related crashes. What are the current attitudes and perceptions? My car's right here, right now. I don't want to wait for a ride. There are few options available anyway. I want to keep the fun going all night. Okay, more on this. Okay, what's the main promise we need to communicate? It's more fun when you don't have to worry about driving, okay? What is the key moment in which we tie this message? Bam, the fun stops when I need to think about getting to the next bar or getting home. What tone of voice should we use? The brand character we're going to do someone that's rugged, cool, and genuine. We need to be a straight shooter buddy guy that's might be someone that sits next to you on a bar stool. So hopefully you're getting the idea that they're trying to create. Clearly this is a product that is for men. They're using a certain tone of voice. They're tying in certain messages and communications. Okay, so the message objectives, continue to use that facets model that we talked about in the previous chapters. So you have to create attention and awareness and interest, touch on people's emotions and create feelings, and then deliver that information. And you want them to create a recall that when I'm ready to look for a ride, I'm at a bar late at night, I'm going to think of road crew. Okay, we want to connect with our audience and have a distinctive personality. So this is that like rugged guy that's looking for a good time, but doesn't want to get into trouble on the highways. We want the audience to believe that we can change their attitude and create conviction and a preference for this service. And then we want them to actually purchase the service and make the call. So again, think of all these facets. I have the picture up here as they come together to make up a unique message for your brand. So getting back to the road crew, their target decision is key to planning a message strategy. Okay, so the target audience for this campaign was 21 to 34-year-old men with a high school education, and most of them are in blue-collar jobs. But what they did find from their secondary information, their research, is that this age group is responsible for many alcohol-related crashes, which have either killed or harmed people. So you see with this road crew idea that they're producing the reason for this service. Why? Because there's been alcohol-related crashes in this age group. So it kind of carves out the target audience here for them as they create their message strategy. Their branding and positioning is built in through their message. Top of mind awareness, okay? Much like a lot of the other symbols and things out there, they use characters, they use color, they use a lot of different things. Now, when we think about that ad I showed you with road crew on it, notice it looked, you've got browns. It looks a little bit like a Harley Davidson symbolism, that ruggedness. So that was what they were going for. But that symbolism is really important. And here we have the Doughboy. So that's a connection with Pillsbury symbols that connect you. And they're still going strong. I think this is at the Macy Day Parade for Thanksgiving. Okay. So translating messages into strategies. Okay, planners search for the best message design. They consider the brand's marketing situation and the target audience's needs and interests. So it's not necessarily, the message design is not graphics, rather it's problem solving. Okay, so the design of the message is more focused on problem solving. So this is a good example that was offered in the book. Ben & Jerry's listens to its audiences. Imagine. So Unilever, who now owns Ben & Jerry's, assumed that people ate ice cream when it was sunny out, and until it discovered its social media chatter that indicated otherwise. So it's very important to listen to your audience and to kind of track that information out there. It found that people mentioned staying home and watching movies while eating Ben & Jerry's on a rainy weekends. And this insight helped Unilever design its messaging. So the more you can find out about your target audience, the more focused your message can be. So some ways to express a strategic approach is using what they call hearts and minds, or head and heart. So your head is using more rational kind of thinking in your objectives, and your part is connecting with them with emotions and feeling. So ways to express a strategic approach here. So a hard sell uses an informational message that touches the mind and creates a response based on logic. Soft sell uses emotional appeals or images to create a response based on attitudes, moods, and feelings. So a soft sell example here is like Teleflora. If you've ever watched some of their ads, they're great. There are a lot of storytelling and reconnecting with people and making people feel good, whether it be on Mother's Day or whatever other time you're sending flowers. The hard sell, again, is more informational and more logical. And here's the example of This Is Your Brain on Drugs. This was an ad that came out when I was in high school, and it was pretty graphic. So the ad basically took a frying pan and said that the egg was your brain on drugs and it's being fried up to help reduce the use of drugs. I think it was pretty effective. So how do you choose your strategic approach that fits? So there's a few strategies on page 266, but we already talked about this in our homework, in our exercise. So Fraser's 6 creative strategies address various situations and identify common approaches in your messaging. So you can decide what you want to do with your messaging, what kind of approach you want to use. So we talked about preemptive, a unique selling proposition, a brand image, positioning, resonance, effective, or ambiguous. So these are strategic formats here on slide 40 for your advertising campaigns. You can be more lecture related, where you have more like a talking head that talks about your purpose and your problem. Sometimes we use people like dentists, doctors, celebrities to focus us in on what the messaging is. Or it can be more dramatic. It can be funny or serious stories about how the product or service works in a character's regular life and what lessons you may learn. So there's the lecture format, there's a dramatic format, there's psychological appeal. What appeal will you use for your campaign? So this appeal connects with some emotion that makes us more attracted and interested in the messaging. So there's lots of examples of ads out there: security, esteem, fear, sex, sensory pleasure, convenience. And that is if the price is emphasized, saves us time or effort. So these are all different appeals. You can decide which direction you want to go. And selling premises, these strategies speak to the head with the sales message, okay? Selling premises uses a rationale approach that states the logic behind the sales offer. You know, it saves you money, it whitens your teeth, it helps you lose weight, you'll look younger. The most important features or attributes must be identified. So for instance, if there's a health claim such as superfood, or that it's good for you, or it has so many grams of protein, or it's low in fat, or it has whole grains in it. So this claim is a product-based strategy based on how well the product will perform. So these are claims that you make. And as far as your nonprofit goes, perhaps you could create a claim that talks about percentages of students' successes when people donate. So you can talk about this many students go on to further learning or success stories. You can talk about that, or what percentages of people you're helping. So those are the claims that you can make. You can make the claim of it being the only music-related nonprofit in South Florida. I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying these are claims you can make, and claims get our attention. You know, when we hear something that says the prestigious or the number one or top rated, that gets our attention. So there's different selling premisi that you can use. Rational customer-focused strategies includes the benefit, what the product does for the user, as I mentioned, the promise, the benefit the user will get by using the product, the reason why, the logic behind why you should buy, why you should donate, and then a unique selling proposition, which is something you need to come up with in your creative brief, is a benefit unique to the product and important to the user. Okay? So what unique selling proposition, what benefit am I going to get if I donate to Grace Notes? Okay? Aside from I'm going to feel good, the benefit I'm going to get is X. So that's the fill in the blank for your group. Other formats, other message formulas, and I say give some examples here. A straightforward message, and a lot you've already filled this in. Demonstration, comparison, problem solution, humor, slice of life, spokesperson, teaser where you're arousing curiosity. So you can choose which message works for you. It may be a couple of these. You did ask this question in your survey, so you know or many of you did. How effective are most ads? What approach works for you? And it depends on the product too, but it could be a combination of a straightforward message with some humor. You know, it could be a demonstration with a slice of life. So it doesn't have to be just one thing. It could be one or up to 3 things. So here's the example from the textbook of a demonstration of Mr. Clean erasers and how well they do when we're cleaning crayons off walls. Matching messages to your objectives. How will your message connect with the consumer? There's different ways that you can connect, and you can come up with a lot of different points here in your identifying your messaging. So yes, you want to get their attention, create interest where the message unfolds over time. You want to resonate with them. You want sometimes repetition is very important for us to remember. We want to touch someone's emotions, maybe use music to connect with us or a jingle. Inform us, teach us, persuade us by using testimonials. That's really a big one, I think, for your nonprofit and for many nonprofits. But what I suggest is, why don't you go look at some South Florida nonprofits, or even bigger than that, you know, like St. Jude or American Red Cross. What kind of messaging do they use? You know, I'm not saying be a copycat, but they're successful for a reason. Here's another one, driving action. The last example here, discouraging a particular behavior. You know, call now, and then also creating brand associations. What issues affect the management of creative strategy and its implementation? Okay, so an idea with legs is called an extension. So you may find that the Grace Notes has a decent campaign or not, okay? But to have you relate to what I'm talking about here in the textbook is sometimes it's a really great concept and you don't want to get rid of it, but you don't want it to get stale. So what a lot of companies do is they extend this idea, this messaging, and the examples I have here obviously is Chick-fil-A, the Geico Gecko, Flo from Progressive. So Flo's still in the commercials, but notice she's brought in some sidekicks so that she's not the focus as much. So it's a great umbrella strategy but you need to kind of update it, and that's where another big idea can still kind of linger on. Another excellent example from years ago is the MasterCard theme that extends over time and across several different platforms, which is excellent, but it was their priceless campaign. And you could priceless anything. You could priceless time at the ball field with your son. Priceless could be, connecting with your sister. Priceless could be getting together with friends. But it all had to do with, yes, this was the priceless part, but it all happened because of MasterCard. And it made it easier to buy, the tickets or the popcorn or the hot dog or, the DJ, whatever it is for your event. So then the last part here of the chapter is adaptation. So taking an idea globally is very difficult to do, but certainly has been done. So standardizing a campaign across multiple markets works if the objectives and the strategic position are the same. Otherwise, the strategy needs to be tweaked and has to have different versions for different markets. If your core targeting position strategies are the same in different markets, then you could use one central creative idea. And a company that does this very well, as we know, is Coke. They currently have an ad out that basically there was no words being said. You could just tell that there was, hey, I'm thirsty, I'm going to get a Coke. Oh, the girl behind the Coke is at the snack bar is cute. Maybe I'll buy her a Coke at the end and we get together. So no words, just we all get it. We all get being thirsty and we all get that, love or a love interest. So here's some other parts. Just decide whether or not you're going to go with an idea. So you have to look at things and evaluate your narrative and your product claim and consider how well the two are integrated. So there's 3 steps to that. So ad agencies look at a bunch of different ideas and they have to decide which ones are really going to fly here. And some things just get tossed into the trash can, these ideas. So something that you need to know that happens at ad agencies is an evaluation. The last part here is avoid vampire creativity. And here the ad is so creative that the ad is remembered but not the brand. This is a problem. So you want to make sure that the brand is always integrated with the message. So I'll give an example. I love the billboard. I think it's so creative, and that's the one that I keep mentioning, which is your wife is hot and then you need a new air conditioning. I have no idea who that company is. I know it's a funny ad. I know it gets my attention, but I don't have a clue who it is because it's all written on the bottom of the billboard. Again, if I'm driving fast or it's covered by trees, who the heck knows what it is? You need to integrate the name into the jingle or the messaging.